David Reed wiped grease from his hands and looked at the nervous alien standing before him. The creature resembled a praying mantis crossed with a businessman, complete with a datapad clutched in its front limbs. Its compound eyes flickered with colors David had learned meant anxiety. "Mr. Reed, I must insist you understand the gravity of this situation," Quillnax said, his translator converting clicks and chirps into perfect English. "The creature in Habitat 12 is not like anything you've encountered." David nodded politely. He'd heard this speech before on other stations, other jobs. Every alien boss thought humans didn't understand danger. I read the file. Vashkar, right? Apex predator from Talmar 6. Reading about it and comprehending the threat are different matters. Quillnax's antennae twitched. 3 handlers are dead. 2 Krell warriors, beings bred for combat, and 1 Synthari tracker who survived 5 years on her own death world. The Vashkar killed them all within seconds. What triggered the attacks? David asked, picking up his toolbox. Quillnax seemed surprised by the question. Trigger? It's a predator. Violence is its nature. Everything has triggers, David said. Animals don't just attack randomly. What were the handlers doing? The station director consulted his datapad. The first entered the habitat to clean. The second attempted to sedate the creature for medical examination. The third was delivering food. So, someone invaded its space, someone tried to drug it, and someone approached during feeding time. David raised an eyebrow. Those aren't random attacks. That's defensive behavior. Quillnax's color shifted to confused purple. Defensive? The creature is 400 pounds of muscle, fangs, and claws. It has 6 limbs, each capable of disemboweling a Krell in one swipe. Its bite force can crush titanium alloy. How can such a being feel defensive? David picked up his toolkit and headed toward the maintenance corridor. Size doesn't equal confidence. Big predators can still feel threatened. What's its name? We don't name the dangerous ones, Quillnax said, scurrying to keep pace. It encourages emotional attachment, which clouds judgment. Makes it harder to see them as individuals too, David muttered. The maintenance tunnels ran behind all the habitats, allowing workers to access environmental controls without entering the enclosures. The tunnel behind Habitat 12 was marked with warning symbols in 15 languages. Someone had added Death Zone in crude galactic standard. Quillnax stopped at the entrance. The tunnel is safe, but do not attempt to open any access panels into the habitat itself. The Vashkar has learned to recognize the sound. It will be waiting on the other side. Good to know she's smart, David said. Intelligence makes it more dangerous, Mr. Reed, or more predictable. David unsealed the tunnel door. I'll be fine, just fixing the climate control. 2 hours, maybe 3. Quillnax's colors flickered between concern and resignation. Your species is either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. We're from Earth, David said with a slight grin. Usually both. The tunnel was dimmer than the main corridors, lit by strips of blue emergency lighting. David's footsteps echoed on the metal grating. The air smelled different here, wilder, less recycled and sterile. He passed several observation panels, thick reinforced glass that allowed visual monitoring of the habitat. He stopped at the first panel and looked inside. The habitat was designed to mimic Talmar SXS environment, with rocky outcroppings, dense vegetation, and a small water feature. Good space for a large predator. Not a cage, at least. Movement in the shadows caught his attention. David stayed still, watching. Patient. She emerged from behind a cluster of dark purple trees. The Vashkar was bigger than the file suggested, built low and powerful. 6 legs moved with fluid grace, each step deliberate and silent. Her fur was midnight black with silver stripes that seemed to shimmer. The head was broad, with ears that swiveled independently. Golden eyes, bright and intelligent, scanned the habitat with constant awareness. "Hello there," David whispered. Though she couldn't hear him through the soundproof glass, the Vashkar froze. Her head turned directly toward the observation panel. Toward him, David's heart rate picked up, but not from fear. From recognition. He'd seen this before in documentaries, in zoo footage, in viral videos from old Earth. The way she moved, the way she held herself, the deliberate ear positioning. This wasn't some alien monster. This was a big cat. A really big cat with extra legs, sure, but the behavioral patterns were unmistakable. She approached the panel slowly, body low, eyes fixed on David. Hunting posture. Testing him. David didn't move. He kept his breathing steady, his posture relaxed. He'd learned this from watching big cat handlers back on Earth. No direct stare, no agressiva instância, no soothing movimentos. Just calm presence. The Vashker reached the glass and pressed her face against it. Her breath fogged the panel. This close, David could see the individual whiskers, the slight scarring around her muzzle, the way her pupils contracted in the light. She was beautiful, her lips pulled back, revealing fangs as long as David's fingers. A threat display. Warning him, David slowly turned his body sideways, reducing his profile. Less threatening. He let his eyes close halfway, then blinked slowly. It was a gesture of peace among Earth's big cats. Whether it meant anything to a Vashker, he didn't know. The creature's ears twitched. Her tail, thick and muscular, swayed once. Confusion, maybe? She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle that didn't make sense. "You've been alone too long, haven't you?" David said softly. "Everyone's afraid of you. Nobody understands you're just doing what predators do." The Vashker made a sound, something between a growl and a chirp. Her database of vocalizations, trying to communicate. David smiled. "Yeah, I hear you." He checked his chronometer. The climate control could wait a few more minutes. He sat down on the tunnel floor, back against the wall, facing the panel. The Vashker watched him, still pressed against the glass. "I'm going to be working here for a while," David said. "Fixing things. I'll probably see you every day. That okay with you?" The creature's tail swished again. She settled on her belly, front legs crossed, maintaining eye contact. Not relaxed, but not aggressive either. Watchful, waiting to see what this strange being would do. David pulled out a protein bar from his toolkit and unwrapped it. The Vashker's nostrils flared. "Interested. Tomorrow," David promised. "Tomorrow I'll bring you something better." 5 days into the job, David had established a routine. Arrive at the maintenance tunnel, check the environmental systems, spend an hour sitting by the observation panel. The Vashker was always there, waiting. Each day, she seemed less tense, more curious about the human who refused to act afraid. That on the 6th day, David brought gifts. Real ones. He traded favors with the kitchen staff and acquired 3 pounds of fresh Tellurian beef, vacuum-sealed and cold. The head cook, a friendly Orcan named Bruss, hadn't asked questions. He'd simply handed over the meat with a knowing look and said, "You're the one with the death wish, yeah?" David had smiled and confirmed it. His reputation was spreading through the station. The crazy human who sat with the killer cat. He entered the tunnel and found her already at the panel. She'd learned his schedule. Her golden eyes tracked him as he approached, and her ears perked forward with interest. Today she seemed different, more alert, almost eager. "Brought you something," David said, holding up the sealed package. The Vashker's nostrils flared immediately. Her whole body tensed with focus, every muscle coiled. David saw her claws extend, dig into the floor. Not aggression. Anticipation. That he sat down in his usual spot and opened the package slowly. The smell of raw meat filled the tunnel. The Vashker made a sound he hadn't heard before, a low rumbling that resonated through the glass. Through his chest. It wasn't threatening. It was hungry, eager. David pulled out a chunk of beef and held it up to the panel. Useless, obviously. She couldn't reach it, but he wanted her to see it, to understand. The Vashker pressed harder against the glass, her breath coming faster. Her tail lashed, those golden eyes fixed on the meat with laser focus. This close, David could see the texture of her fur, the power in her shoulders, the slight graying around her muzzle that suggested age. "You must think I'm cruel," David said, "showing you food you can't have." He set the chunk down and pulled out his multi-tool. The maintenance access panel was right next to the observation window. A small opening, barely 6 inches wide, designed for inserting sensors or cleaning tools. Just big enough, David overrode the lock and slid the access panel open. A gap appeared in the barrier between him and the Vashker. The smell of her habitat rushed through. Earth and musk and something wild. His heart hammered, but his hand stayed steady. He picked up the chunk of beef and slowly pushed it through the opening. The Vashker snatched it instantly. Her head darted forward with blinding speed, fangs closing around the meat, gone in one swallow. David didn't flinch. He just pulled out another chunk and offered it. This time she was slower, more careful. She took the meat gently, almost delicately, and backed away to eat it. Her eyes never left David's face. "Good girl," David murmured. "See? I'm not here to hurt you." He fed her the rest of the beef piece by piece. By the end, the Vashker was lying down on her side of the panel, relaxed and content. Her purring, if that's what the rumbling sound was, vibrated through the tunnel. David felt it in his bones. "They say you're a monster," David told her. "They say you killed 3 people. But I'm guessing they didn't give you much choice, did they?" The Vashker blinked slowly at him. The gesture was so familiar it made David's chest ache. Just like a house cat, just like a lion, just like every big predator he'd ever seen. They all had the same language, the same basic needs. Food, safety, understanding. "I'm going to call you Luna," David decided, "because of those silver stripes, and because you've been living in the dark too long." Luna's ear twitched at the sound. She lifted her head slightly, considering, testing the name. Then she settled back down with a satisfied huff. David spent another hour there, just sitting, just being present. Luna dozed, one eye occasionally cracking open to check on him. It was the most peaceful David had felt since arriving at the station. When he finally stood to leave, Luna rose too. She approached the panel one more time and pressed her massive paw against the glass. David matched her, placing his hand on his side of the barrier. Her paw was 3 times the size of his hand, tipped with claws that could shred him in seconds. But there was no threat in the gesture, just connection. "See you tomorrow," David promised. That night, Quillnax summoned him to the administrative office. The station director was pacing when David arrived, his colors flickering between agitation and confusion. "Mr. Reed, I've reviewed the security footage from Tunnel 12. Quillnax turned his compound eyes on David. "You opened an access panel. You fed the Vashker through a direct opening. This is in violation of every safety protocol we have." David nodded. "Yes, sir. You could have been killed." "I don't think so." Quillnax's antennae quivered. "You don't think so? That creature has ended 3 lives. What makes you believe you're special? What makes you immune?" "I'm not special," David said calmly. "And I'm definitely not immune. But I understand her. She's not a mindless killer. She's a scared predator stuck in a box with aliens who don't speak her language." "Her language." Quillnax's colors shifted to bewildered yellow. "She's an animal. Animals communicate constantly," David explained. "Through body language, vocalizations, behavior patterns. Luna, the Vashker, she's been trying to tell everyone she's uncomfortable. But nobody's listening. You named it. Her. I named her." Quillnax sat down heavily, his limbs clicking against the chair. "Your species truly is insane. Only a human would befriend something designed to kill. Earth has lots of apex predators," David said. "We learned to live with them. Sometimes we even domesticated them. Wolves became dogs. Wild cats became house cats. We understand predators because we are predators." The station director was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "The Sanctuary Board will want to see proof of this connection before allowing continued contact. Can you demonstrate control over the creature?" David shook his head. "I don't control her. That's not how this works. But I can show you trust. Real trust. Give me 2 weeks. And if you're wrong, if the Vashker attacks you, then you'll have video footage for the safety training," David said with a slight smile. "But I'm not wrong." Quillnax's colors stabilized to resigned blue. 2 weeks, Mr. Reed. But you sign a waiver absolving the Sanctuary of responsibility. Deal. As David left the office, he couldn't help but smile. Luna had been alone for 8 months. 8 months of handlers who saw only danger, only death. But not anymore. Now, she had someone who saw her for what she really was, just a big cat who needed a friend. Week 2 brought challenges David hadn't anticipated. Luna was receptive to his presence, even seemed to enjoy their daily sessions, but the real test was coming. Quillnax had arranged for the Sanctuary Board to observe a direct interaction. Not through glass, not through a 6-inch access panel. They wanted David inside the habitat with Luna. David had agreed immediately. The board members thought he was suicidal. Quillnax seemed resigned to planning a funeral. Only David felt calm about the whole situation. The day before the demonstration, David noticed something wrong. Luna wasn't at the observation panel when he arrived. He found her in the back corner of the habitat, lying on her side, breathing heavily. Her movements were sluggish, pained. "Luna." David pressed against the glass, trying to see better. She lifted her head at the sound of his voice, and he saw it. A swollen area on her right shoulder, matted fur, the telltale signs of infection. She'd been hiding it, the way predators do, not wanting to show weakness. David immediately called for the medical team. 3 veterinarians arrived within minutes, led by Dr. Surin, a tall reptilian species with steady hands and cautious eyes. "We've been trying to treat that wound for 2 months, Dr. Surin said, studying the monitors. "She won't let anyone close enough. Every attempt ends with someone nearly getting killed." "What caused it?" David asked. "Puncture wound from the previous habitat. A territorial dispute with another predator before she was relocated here. It healed wrong, developed an abscess. Without treatment, it will eventually kill her." David looked at Luna, saw the pain in her golden eyes, the tension in her body. "I can treat it." The veterinary team exchanged glances. Dr. Surin's tail twitched with skepticism. "Mr. Reed, with all respect to your maintenance skills, this requires medical expertise." "Then come with me," David said. "Guide me through it. But I have to be the one who touches her. She trusts me." "Trust won't stop her predatory instincts when she's in pain," Dr. Surin warned. "Injured animals are unpredictable." "So are humans," David replied. "Let me try. If she reacts badly, I'll back off." Quillnax, who'd been listening through the comm system, gave reluctant approval. They had nothing to lose. Luna was dying anyway. David suited up in light protective gear, more to satisfy the medical team than from any real belief it would help. If Luna wanted to hurt him, no amount of padding would matter. Dr. Surin provided him with antiseptic, antibiotics, and surgical tools, explaining each step carefully. The habitat door opened with a hiss. David stepped through alone. The sanctuary staff watched from every available screen, silent and tense. Betting pools had apparently formed about how long he'd survive. Most gave him under 30 seconds. Luna was still in her corner, but her head rose the moment David entered. Her ears swiveled toward him. Recognition, followed by confusion. He'd never been in her space before. This was different. This was her territory. David moved slowly, keeping his body language relaxed. Non tretaining. He sat down about 20 feet away from her and unpacked the medical supplies, talking the whole time. "Hey girl, I know you're hurting. I can see it. That shoulder looks bad." He kept his voice low, soothing. "I want to help, but only if you'll let me. This is your choice, Luna. All yours." Luna watched him with those intelligent eyes. Her breathing was labored, each breath clearly painful. She was weighing options, calculating risk. David could almost see her thinking that he held up the antiseptic bottle. "This is going to sting. I won't lie about that. But it'll help clean the infection. After that, antibiotics. You'll feel better. I promise." Luna made a low sound, somewhere between a growl and a whimper. Pain. Uncertainty. David's heart ached for her. She'd been hurt, abandoned, feared. And now here was this strange human asking her to trust him with her vulnerability. David set down the medical supplies and simply waited. He'd learned patience from watching big cat documentaries as a kid. Predators move on their own timeline. You can't rush them. 0.5 minutes passed. 10. Luna's breathing grew more strained. Finally, she made a decision. She slowly, painfully crawled toward David. Each movement was agony, but she kept coming. She stopped 3 feet away and collapsed on her side, the infected shoulder facing him. "Good girl," David breathed. "Brave girl." He moved closer, inch by inch. Luna's eyes followed him, alert but not aggressive. When he was close enough to touch her, He paused, extended his hand slowly, letting her sniff. Her nostrils flared, taking in his scent. Then, incredibly, she pressed her massive head against his palm. Permission granted, that David's hands shook as he examined the wound. It was worse up close, hot and swollen, definitely infected. Luna flinched when he touched it, but didn't pull away. She trusted him. Fully, completely trusted him. Dr. Surin, David said into his calm, walking me through this, step by step. For the next 40 minutes, David worked with the veterinarian's guidance. He cleaned the wound, drained the abscess, applied antibiotic cream, and administered an injection. Luna growled through some of it, her claws extending and digging furrows into the ground. But she never turned on him, never snapped. She endured because she understood he was helping. When it was done, David was covered in sweat and his hands were cramping. Luna's wound was properly dressed, the infection being fought by strong antibiotics. She would heal. Luna lifted her head and looked at David. Then she did something that made the entire observation team gasp. She licked his face. One long, rough swipe with a tongue that could strip flesh from bone. To anyone else, it would look like a prelude to eating him. David knew better. It was affection, gratitude. The same gesture a mother cat gives her kittens. David laughed and scratched behind her ear. Luna's purr rumbled through the habitat like distant thunder. She rolled on her back, all 6 legs in the air, exposing her vulnerable belly. The ultimate sign of trust from a predator. David rubbed her stomach, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the soft fur. "You're just a big baby, aren't you?" Over the comm, he heard stunned silence. Then Quilnax's voice, colored with disbelief. "Mr. Reed, I believe you've made your point. The board will not require tomorrow's demonstration. You have full access privileges to work with the Vashkar." David smiled. "Hear that, Luna? You're stuck with me now." Luna's response was to wrap one massive paw around David's arm, claws carefully retracted, holding him close. Not a threat. A hug. The maintenance worker and the apex predator stayed that way for an hour. 2 species from different worlds finding common ground in the simple language of trust. Outside the habitat, Dr. Surin updated her medical notes with shaking hands. In the summary section, she wrote, "Patient responded well to treatment when approached by human staff. Recommend David Reed for all future medical interventions. Note, humanity's classification as a death world species is clearly accurate. They befriend what should terrify them." News of David's success with Luna spread through the station faster than a hull breach alarm. Within 3 days, he'd received 17 requests from other departments, 5 interview invitations from Galactic News Services, and 1 marriage proposal from a Diluvian researcher who apparently found his reckless courage attractive. David ignored most of it. He had work to do, and Luna's recovery to monitor. Her shoulder was healing well, the infection clearing. She was moving better, eating more, and had started playing. Actual playing. She'd found an old enrichment ball in her habitat and would bat it around like an oversized kitten while David watched and laughed. But the sanctuary had other problems. Other predators who weren't adapting to captivity. And now they had a human who seemed to speak their language. Dr. Surin approached him during his lunch break in the commissary. She sat down across from him, her scaled face serious. "Mr. Reed, I need your help with another case." David looked up from his sandwich. "I'm a maintenance worker, document, not an animal behaviorist." "You're whatever Luna says you are," Dr. Surin replied. "And right now, you're the only being on this station who can approach a dangerous predator and walk away. We have a Thorian ridge wolf in Habitat 7. It's starving itself to death." David set down his food. "Tell me about it." The Thorian ridge wolf, Dr. Surin explained, was a pack animal. Highly social, highly intelligent, and completely miserable in isolation. It had been rescued from a crashed transport ship 3 months ago, the only survivor. Without its pack, it had simply given up, refused food, refused enrichment activities, just lay in its den waiting to die. "We've tried everything," Dr. Surin said. "Recorded pack calls, sent markers from others of its species, even holographic companions. Nothing works. It's grieving, and we don't know how to help it." David thought about dogs, about wolves, about social animals who needed connection more than food. Let me meet it. Habitat 7 was smaller than Luna's, designed for a mid-sized predator. The environment mimicked Thorian's rocky highlands, all gray stone and sparse vegetation. In the back corner, barely visible, lay a creature about the size of an earth wolf but built heavier, with 6 legs and fur that shifted colors like oil on water. David entered the habitat with Dr. Sarin monitoring from outside. The wolf didn't even lift its head. It just lay there, ribs showing through its fur, eyes dull and empty. David's heart broke looking at it. He sat down on the floor, not too close, and just existed. Quiet, present, patient. After an hour, he started talking. About Earth, about wolves and dogs, about pack animals and what they needed. The Thorian wolf's ear twitched. Barely, but it was acknowledgement. David came back every day for a week. Sitting, talking, existing in the wolf's space without demanding anything. On the 8th day, the wolf lifted its head and looked at him. Really looked at him, seeing him for the first time. "Hey there," David said softly. "I know you're sad. I know you miss your family. I can't bring them back, and I'm sorry. But you don't have to be alone." The wolf stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly it stood, wobbled, too weak from starvation. David didn't move, didn't reach out. The wolf took 3 shaky steps and collapsed at David's feet. Not quite touching, but close. Close enough. David pulled out the meat he'd brought. Fresh, raw, still warm. The wolf's nostrils flared, but it didn't move to eat. David tore off a piece and held it out, the same way he'd fed Luna. An offering. A bridge. The wolf took it gently, chewed slowly, and swallowed. Then it ate another piece. And another. For the first time in 3 months, it was eating. Not much. Not enough. But it was a start. Over the next 2 weeks, David split his time between Luna and the Thorian wolf, who he'd named Shadow for the way its fur rippled with darkness. Shadow was recovering, gaining weight, becoming more alert. But something was still missing. That's when David had an idea. A crazy, probably stupid idea. But crazy seemed to be his specialty, that he went to Quillnax with a proposal. What if we socialized some of the predators? Let them interact with each other. Quillnax's colors immediately shifted to alarmed red. Absolutely not. Mixing species, especially predators, would result in territorial aggression, violence, death, or it could result in companionship, David argued. Some of these animals are dying from loneliness. They need social interaction, even if it's not with their own species. You're suggesting we create a pack from different predators? Quillnax's antennae quivered with disbelief. That's not how nature works. It's how dogs work, David said. On Earth, we have multi-species households all the time. Dogs, cats, even birds living together peacefully. They learn each other's languages, form bonds. Why couldn't that work here? Quillnax was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. If you're wrong, multiple valuable specimens will die. And if I'm right, they'll live. Really live, not just survive. David leaned forward. Let me try with Shadow and Luna. Just those 2. Supervised introduction, controlled environment. If it doesn't work, we separate them immediately. The station director's colors flickered through every shade of uncertainty before settling on resigned blue. You have 1 attempt, Mr. Reed. 1. If there's any sign of aggression, we end the experiment. 3 days later, David stood in a neutral meeting space between the 2 habitats. Luna was on one side, curious and alert. Shadow was on the other, nervous but interested. The entire sanctuary staff watched the monitors, ready to intervene. David opened both doors. Luna padded in first, confident and powerful. She saw Shadow and froze. Her ears went back. Shadow's fur rippled with defensive colors, body low and tense. This was the moment. Fight or flight. Aggression or acceptance. David sat down between them. Luna, this is Shadow. Shadow, meet Luna. We're all friends here. Nobody's hunting. Nobody's fighting. Just friends. Luna looked at David, then at Shadow. The wolf was smaller, weaker, clearly not a threat. Luna's predatory instincts were strong, but so was her growing bond with David. She seemed to understand that this creature mattered to her human. She approached slowly, deliberately. Shadow tensed, ready to run. Luna reached the wolf and did something remarkable. She lowered her head and gently bumped Shadow's shoulder with her nose. The same greeting she gave David. Recognition. Acceptance to Shadow's first stopped rippling. The wolf, starved for pack connection, understood the gesture. It returned the bump, then licked Luna's face in submission. Pack hierarchy established. Luna was dominant. Shadow accepted that. And just like that, they were okay. Within an hour, they were lying together, Shadow curled against Luna's larger form, the way it would have slept with its pack. Luna's purr rumbled through both of them. Two lonely predators finding comfort in each other. David watched with tears in his eyes. Dr. Sarin's voice came through his calm, shaky with emotion. Mr. Reed, you just rewrote everything we know about multi-species predator dynamics. I just let them be lonely together, David replied. Sometimes that's all anyone needs. 3 months after befriending Luna, David's job description had officially changed. He was no longer just a maintenance worker. The Sanctuary Board had created a new position specifically for him, Predator Integration Specialist. It came with a raise, better quarters, and a universal acknowledgement that humans were completely insane. David didn't mind the reputation. It meant he could do his real work without constant interference. Luna and Shadow had become inseparable companions, and the Sanctuary's death rate among predators had dropped to 0. Turns out, most dangerous animals just needed understanding and companionship. He was reviewing enrichment schedules when the emergency alarms blared through the station. Red lights strobed in the corridors. Quilnax's voice came over the intercom, tight with stress. All personnel to emergency stations. We have a code black situation. Transport crash, Sector 9, multiple casualties. David ran toward the command center, his heart pounding. Code black meant rescue operations, meant survivors who needed help. The command center was chaos when he arrived, filled with personnel coordinating rescue teams. Quilnax spotted him immediately. Mr. Reed, we need everyone. A transport vessel carrying rescued animals crashed during docking. The ship is damaged. Fuel cells are leaking. We have maybe 4 hours before it explodes. How many survivors? David asked. Unknown. The ship's sensors are offline. We're sending teams in now to extract whoever we can. Quilnax's colors shifted to grim purple. But there's a problem. One of the cargo holds contains a juvenile Vashker. Our teams can't get close. It's terrified and attacking anyone who approaches. David felt his blood run cold. A juvenile? How young? Approximately 6 months old. Still dependent on parental care. Dr. Sarin appeared beside them, her face grave. It was being transported to reunite with its mother when the crash happened. The poor thing is traumatized, injured, and defending itself the only way it knows how. Where's the mother? David asked. Quilnax and Dr. Sarin exchanged glances. The station director spoke carefully. The mother was relocated here 8 months ago after a territorial incident. Habitat 12. David's world tilted. Luna? Luna is this cub's mother. We didn't know when she arrived, Dr. Sarin said quickly. The transport company never mentioned offspring. We thought she was alone. The cub was apparently hidden during the initial capture, found later. They've been separated all this time. David thought about Luna's behavior when he'd first met her. The aggression, the fear. She hadn't just been a predator in a box. She'd been a mother separated from her baby. 8 months of not knowing if her cub was alive. 8 months of grief. I'm getting that cub out, David said. Where's the crash site? Mr. Reed, be reasonable, Quilnax began. The juvenile is even more unpredictable than Luna was. It's injured, scared, and has no reason to trust anyone. Our best security team couldn't get within 10 feet. Because they're approaching it like a threat, David said. I'll approach it like Luna's baby. Because that's what it is. Dr. Sarin handed him a medical kit. At least take this. The cub has a leg injury. If you somehow manage to get close, you'll need to stabilize it for transport. David suited up in minimal protective gear and headed to the crash site. The transport ship was a mess. One side crumpled against the docking bay wall, smoke leaking from multiple points. The fuel cell warning lights pulsed ominously. 3 hours now, maybe less. The cargo hold where the juvenile Vashker was trapped was in the ship's rear section. David could hear it before he saw it. High-pitched cries of fear and pain, so different from Luna's deep rumble. Baby sounds, a child calling for its mother. He entered the hold slowly, keeping his movements gentle. The space was dark, lit only by emergency lights. Cargo containers had shifted during the crash, creating a maze of metal and shadows. The cub's cries echoed from somewhere in the back. "Hey, little one," David called softly. "I'm here to help. I'm a friend of your mom's." A hiss answered him. Then a small form darted between containers. The cub was maybe a quarter of Luna's size, fur still fuzzy with youth, spots that would fade to stripes as it matured. It limped badly on its back left leg, and one ear was torn. It looked at David with golden eyes full of terror. "I know you're scared," David continued, sitting down on the floor. "Non treatening. Patient. I know everything hurts, and you don't know where your mama is. But she's safe. She's here, on this station. I can take you to her." The cub's ears twitched. It tilted its head, processing. David slowly pulled out a piece of meat from his pocket. The same kind he fed Luna. The scent would be familiar. Comforting that, he tossed the meat gently toward the cub. It landed a few feet away. The juvenile approached cautiously, sniffed it, then devoured it in one bite. Still watching David. Still afraid, but less so. Hunger and fear battling for dominance. David tossed another piece, closer to himself. The cub hesitated, then limped forward to take it. This close, David could see the extent of its injuries. The leg was definitely broken, burns on its side from the crash. It needed medical attention soon. "Your mama is named Luna," David said quietly. "She's beautiful and strong, and she's been missing you so much. She's going to be so happy to see you." The cub finished the meat and looked at David. Really looked at him. Then it made a decision. It limped the last few feet and collapsed against David's leg. A baby seeking comfort from the only friendly presence in its nightmare. David carefully scooped the cub into his arms. It was heavier than he expected, all muscle even at this age. The cub whimpered when he touched its injured leg, but didn't struggle. It just buried its face against David's chest and made small, broken sounds. "I've got you," David whispered. "You're safe now. Let's go find your mama." He carried the cub out of the wreckage, moving as quickly as he dared without jostling the injuries. The rescue teams stared as he emerged, this human cradling a predator that had sent trained security running. David ignored them and headed straight for Habitat 12. Dr. Surin met him halfway, her medical team ready. "The leg needs to be set immediately." "Do it in Luna's habitat," David said. "She needs to see her baby. She needs to know it's alive." Quilnax started to protest, then stopped. He'd learned not to argue with David when it came to predators. "Fine, but we're monitoring everything." They entered Luna's habitat together, David carrying the cub, Dr. Surin with her medical equipment. Luna was at the far end with Shadow. She looked up when they entered, and her whole body went rigid. Her ears shot forward. Her nostrils flared that she'd caught the scent. Recognized it. 8 months apart, but mother knows her child. Luna crossed the habitat in 3 bounds, faster than David had ever seen her move. Shadow scrambled to get out of her way. She skidded to a stop in front of David, her golden eyes locked on the bundle in his arms. The cub lifted its head and saw its mother. The sound the cub made was pure joy, pure relief. It struggled in David's grip, trying to reach Luna. David carefully set it down, and the reunion happened instantly. Luna was all over her baby, licking it, sniffing it, making worried, rumbling sounds as she discovered the injuries. The cub was crying and purring simultaneously, pressing against its mother, safe at last. David stepped back, tears streaming down his face. Dr. Surin was crying too, her professional composure completely gone. Even Quilnax's colors had shifted to something soft and emotional. Luna looked up at David. Their eyes met. In that moment, there was perfect understanding. He'd given her back what she'd lost. Her family, her child, everything. She left the cub for just a moment, approached David, and pressed her massive head against his chest. "Thank you." The gratitude was clear, universal, transcending species. Then she returned to her baby, and Dr. Surin moved in to treat the injuries while Luna supervised every movement. The cub would heal. The family was together, and David understood, finally, why he'd been brought to this station. Not to maintain equipment, to maintain hope, to bridge the gap between species with the simple language of compassion. Outside the habitat, Shadow watched the reunion with interest. The pack was growing, and that was exactly as it should be. 6 weeks after the reunion, Luna's cub had fully recovered. The leg had healed straight and strong. The burns had faded, and the torn ear gave the youngster a roguish look. David had named the cub Nova, after the bright spark of hope it represented. Luna approved, or at least didn't object, which was close enough. Nova had integrated seamlessly into the small pack. Luna was the protective mother. Shadow played the role of patient older sibling, and David was the weird hairless uncle who brought treats and belly rubs. The sanctuary staff had stopped questioning the arrangement. Results spoke louder than protocols, but David's real achievement wasn't the pack itself. It was what the pack represented. He'd proven that understanding mattered more than fear, that with patience and knowledge, bridges could be built between any species. The Sanctuary Board had taken notice that SO had the Galactic Conservation Council. They'd arrived that morning, 3 representatives from different worlds, here to observe David's methods and determine if they could be replicated across other facilities. David found the whole thing amusing. He wasn't doing anything special, just treating animals like individuals instead of statistics, that he was in Luna's habitat when the representatives arrived for their tour. Nova was play fighting with Shadow, all exaggerated pounces and gentle bites. Luna supervised from her favorite rock, looking like a proud parent at a playground. David was installing new climbing structures, trying to add more enrichment. Mr. Reed, Quilnax's voice came through the comm. The council representatives are here. Send them in, David replied, not looking up from his work. Luna's good with visitors now, as long as they're respectful. The habitat door opened. 3 aliens entered, looking nervous despite all assurances of safety. There was a crystalline being named Shards, a floating jellyfish-like creature called Loomis, and a heavily armored beetle person who introduced himself as Crater. They stopped dead when they saw the scene before them. A massive Vashker lounging peacefully while her cub wrestled with a Thorian ridge wolf. And in the middle of it all, a human building furniture like he was in his backyard instead of surrounded by apex predators. This is extraordinary, Loomis said, their translation device rendering their bioluminescent pulses into words. The behavioral data suggested success, but seeing it directly is quite different. Nova noticed the newcomers and bounded over, curious and fearless. The cub was all lanky adolescent energy, tripping over its own paws. It approached Crater and sniffed his armored leg with great interest. Crater froze. Is this safe? Nova's harmless, David said. Just curious. She's still learning boundaries. If she gets too rough, just say gentle in a firm voice. She's learning that command. Nova started chewing on Crater's foot armor. The beetle alien looked terrified. Mr. Reed, assistance please. Gentle, Nova, David called. The cub immediately stopped chewing and sat down, looking pleased with herself. David tossed her a toy, and she pounced on it instead. Crisis averted. Shards shimmered with what might have been laughter. Your integration methods are unorthodox, but clearly effective. Tell me, how did you know these specific species could coexist? David shrugged, setting down his tools. I did not for sure, but I know social animals. Most predators aren't actually aggressive by nature. They're just protective, territorial, or scared. Give them security, companionship, and proper care, and they're usually pretty chill. Chill. Loomis pulsed with confusion. Relaxed. Peaceful. Happy. David gestured to Luna, who was now grooming Shadow with long, careful licks. Look at them. That's not tolerance. That's family. They chose this. Luna raised her head at the mention, her golden eyes fixing on the representatives. She stood and approached, making Loomis retreat several feet. But Luna wasn't interested in them. She walked directly to David and head-butted his shoulder, her version of a hug. David scratched behind her ears, and her purr made the ground vibrate. The files say she killed 3 people, Crater said quietly. How is this the same creature? She's not, David replied. Those people saw a monster and treated her like one. I saw a scared mother and treated her with respect. She responded to what she was given. That's true for most beings, I think. Shards moved closer, careful to stay outside Luna's immediate space. Would these methods work with other species? Other predators? Some probably. Not all. David was honest. Every animal is an individual. What worked for Luna might not work for a crag bear or a void stalker. But the basic principle stays the same. Understand their language. Respect their nature. Give them what they actually need, not what you assume they need. And what do they need? Loomis asked. Same things we all need, David said simply. Safety, food, purpose, connection. Luna needed her baby back. Shadow needed pack. Nova needed healing and her mother. I just facilitated what they were already looking for. Nova had gotten bored with her toy and was now attempting to climb David like a tree. At 6 months old, she was already strong enough to knock him over. David laughed and gently redirected her to a climbing structure. She scampered up it with enthusiasm, then jumped onto Shadow's back. The wolf huffed but tolerated the assault with patient dignity. The representatives watched the interaction with clear fascination. Kratos spoke first. The council would like to offer you a position. Galactic Animal Behavior Consultant. You would travel to facilities across known space, helping them implement these integration techniques. David considered it, saw the universe spreading before him, full of misunderstood creatures who just needed someone to speak their language. It was tempting, really tempting. Then Luna rumbled, sensing his distraction. Nova tumbled over and flopped across his feet. Shadow looked up from where he'd been napping, one ear cocked in David's direction. His family, his pack. I appreciate the offer, David said carefully. But I'm needed here. Luna's still building trust with other staff members. Nova needs consistent training. Shadow's just starting to recover from his grief. I can't leave them now. We would offer significant compensation, Shards pointed out, and the opportunity to help thousands of creatures instead of just 3. These 3 are enough, David said firmly. They're mine, and I'm theirs. That matters more than numbers. Loomis pulsed with understanding. A pack bond. You've integrated yourself into their social structure. Or they integrated me into theirs, David corrected. Either way, we belong together. The representatives accepted his decision with grace. Before they left, Crater asked one final question. What would you say to other facilities struggling with aggressive predators? David thought about it. About Luna in her corner, dying alone. About Shadow, starving from grief. About Nova terrified in a crashed ship. I'd say look past the teeth and claws. See the individual. Every creature that seems like a monster is usually just scared, hurt, or lonely. Give them understanding instead of fear. Give them a chance to be something other than what you expect. Most of the time, they'll surprise you. After the representatives left, David sat down among his pack. Luna settled beside him, massive and warm. Nova curled up in his lap, already drowsy. Shadow rested his head on David's knee. 3 predators, 3 different species, one family. Quilnax's voice came through the comm one last time. Mr. Reed, I've been asked to update the Sanctuary Handbook with your techniques. What should I call this section? David looked at his family, at the trust they'd built together, at the love that crossed every barrier of species and origin. He smiled. Call it the Deathworlder approach, he said. Humans learned to survive on a world full of predators. We learned their language because we had to. We learned to see them as neighbors instead of enemies. That's our gift to the galaxy. Not fear, understanding. Nova yawned, showing tiny fangs that would one day be fearsome. Luna's purr rumbled through them all. Shadow's tail thumped once against the ground. Content. Safe. Loved. David had come to the sanctuary to fix broken equipment. Instead, he'd fix broken hearts. He'd built a family from species that should have been enemies. He'd proven that understanding was stronger than fear, that compassion could bridge any divide. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all. To look at something dangerous and see something worth saving. To look at a predator and see a friend. To look at the vast, scary universe and find family in the most unexpected places. Luna licked his face, one long, affectionate swipe. David laughed and hugged her neck, his arms barely reaching halfway around. His big cat, his friend, his family, exactly where he belonged.